Indeed, that's who I was casting Utrecht with earlier this year. And there they are, showing a smile with their judge and getting ready and in position. Jamie Boyt rocking that cottony plushie there as well, a Pokemon that's paid dividends for him in the past.
Absolutely, a regional championship with that cottony. One of the only regional champions that I know of really in the history of VGC that's one with a Pokemon, certainly one with cottony, but also one with Pokemon that aren't fully evolved and staples in the metagame. But as these players stare each other down, I think Ben is looking at that team list and trying to work out a game plan against something that Jamie is bringing that we'll be showing on stream in just a moment. But let me tell you, it's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, it really will. And just look at those accomplishments there from both of these trainers, and both very recent accomplishments. There it is, 2018 Malmö Regional finalist for Ben in 2018, and for Jamie Boyt, 2018 Malmö Regional Champion. So it is indeed a rerun of that, and two Worlds qualifications, World's top 16s there for Jamie Boyt, as well as regional top 16 for Ben. These are players who know each other very well as well, and it'll be really interesting getting into this game to see how that might affect their game plan.
Indeed. That sort of prior knowledge of how your opponent tends to play can pay dividends when you're trying to feel out what your opponent is likely to do in any particular situation, especially for Ben here, knowing that Jamie is using something a little bit different to the standard compositions that we see. He's going to have to really, I think, put all the balls in the court of making the right predictions and trying to figure out exactly what Jamie's going to be doing, because Jamie's practiced probably this matchup that's coming up many times before.
Yeah, exactly, and this is where you can have the advantage if you're running something slightly off meta like Jamie may well be running today, because as you were saying, Ben, that is what he tends to prefer to do, whereas Ben tends to prefer to run slightly more expected Pokemon. But of course, that means that Jamie will have had plenty of practice against such expected Pokemon. Ben may well not have done, as we get into their team preview very shortly. And yes, Ben and I have a sneak peek as to what that might be, so we have some prior knowledge as to the decisions that might be going into this team preview, and indeed how on or off meta both of these teams are.
Now, Jamie's been having quite a lot of fun, both with the people that he's been staying with this weekend, as well as people around the venue, saying that he is running a banded Screamtail. Well, we're about to get the team preview up onto the screen, and you'll see exactly what that means and why Jamie has been having so much fun. There it is. It's the Power Band. Yeah,
I fell for that myself, Ben. He told me he was running a banded Screamtail. I thought, that's really cool. How'd you calc for that? And the answer is, it of course reduces the speed of that Power Band while boosting attack. There you go, Screamtail. Haven't seen many of those recently. With the Power Band, with a Brute Bonnet, Torkoal, Iron Hands, Tatsugiri and Dondozo, which is a combination that Jamie Boyt has used before, and it's really cool to see that Brute Bonnet there as well.
Indeed. Brute Bonnet, a Pokemon that Jamie does prefer to the more common Amoonguss that people prefer to use for its general consistency. And it's quite funny, the Amoongusses tend to Terra away from their poison type, where Brute Bonnet in this case wants to Terra into the poison type. So a nice little parallel there with its more recent sibling, so to speak. And looking forward to seeing how all of these Pokemon interact together, especially with that howl coming out from the Screamtail. But more of that later. Now let's have a look at Ben's team.
Yeah, and he's running a Fluttermane as well. It's slightly more expected, with Amoonguss, Chi-Yu, Iron Bundle, Tinglu and Gyarados. So two Ruin Pokemon for Ben there, whereas for Jamie, no Ruin Pokemon at all, and there you go. You don't have to run one in Regulation Set C. So yes, Ben is running that Amoonguss instead of the Brute Bonnet, and yes, a fairly expected Gyarados set there as well, a slightly more supportive-orientated Gyarados with another helping hand. David and I were talking before about how Gyarados doesn't appear to have hands, but it can learn that move, giving a helping fin, a helping whisker, perhaps.
I think that would be a very good way to describe what Gyarados is doing. I'll leave the way that it gets his hands in motion to another time. But what I'm looking at in this team is how consistent the Pokemon are that Ben are using. There's a Focus Sash on the Chi-Yu. That Fluttermane is likely trained to be able to take a lot of damage. There's the Icy Wind coming out from the Iron Bundle to just put everything in range. That Tinglu is not carrying Fisher. I think that's an important adaptation that most players have made going into this later stage of Regulation Set C, and instead favouring that Ruination, both a move that allows it to still be threatening even when it's been burnt or intimidated, but also, you know, do consistent damage and let the teammates deal with the final few hit points.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really interesting move to have, and of course the signature move of the Treasure of Ruin Pokemon, and more consistent than Fisher, but still not 100% accurate. So you are still rolling the dice somewhat. And speaking of dice, there is that loaded dice for Jamie on his Brute Bonnet, which is able to dish out at least 4 hits with its Bullet Seed.
Yeah, there's a lot of utility there, and of course that'll be boosted up potentially by the Howl on that Scream Tail if it manages to get into Trick Room, as I think Jamie is probably going to be wanting to do. There's a little bit of an interaction between all of the speeds of these Pokemon as well, but one of the things that we'll have to see going into the match. In the meantime, please show your support in the chat here for who you think is going to be winning this match. Either Jamie on the left, Ben, of course, on the right.
Yeah, I mean, it would be wonderful if Ben could clinch out this victory, having lost to Jamie Boyt in the final of the Malmö Regional Championship in 2018. But only time will tell as we get into this game. There it is. There's the Scream Tail for Jamie with the Dondozo there. So may well have a Tatsugiri in the back there for Jamie, as well as Amoonguss and Fluttermane for Ben.
I really like this sort of composition with Dondozo and Scream Tail, and especially with the Trick Room coming out as an option for Jamie here. One of the early things that I think a lot of trainers tried in Regulation Set A with Dondozo was to use it without Tatsugiri in a Trick Room environment because it's so naturally slow. Of course, with that Tatsugiri, it can also boost its stats up and have a little bit of a speedier mode. But mode is really the way to describe how Jamie has built his team. It can go fast or a little bit faster, but it also really can go slow too.
Yeah, it can. The problem with going slow, of course, is there is an Amoonguss there from Ben. So Amoonguss is a famously slow Pokemon and will be able to immediately put Pokemon to sleep when the speed order is reversed in Trick Room. So in fact, Jamie is not setting up the Trick Room. He's switching in his Tatsugiri, hopping into Dondozo's mouth. That's something we haven't seen too much today. Dondozo having a little bite of sushi as its stats do boost quite sharply with the Tatsugiri in its mouth. So it's becoming a real threat on the field as a Terra comes out.
From the Fluttermane onto Ben's side of the field, I believe... Oh, sorry.
Oh,
no, a Terra Steel coming out from that Dondozo. So everything happening from Jamie's perspective right now. We'll see what Ben reacts to, of course. But that Dondozo is carrying the safety goggles, so it isn't going to be as much threatened by the Amoonguss, nor is it going to be threatened by a Thunderbolt coming out from that Fluttermane, and Giz going to be able to reply. Ooh. Wow, what a amount of damage coming out there from that Heavy Slam, boosted by the Terra Steel, nearly knocking out an Amoonguss in one. What a turn.
Yeah, I can only imagine that the Heavy Slam may well have, should have been a knockout there onto the Amoonguss. Perhaps it was a low damage roll because Terra Steel with the boosted stats of the Dondozo. Then again, Amoonguss is a very bulky Pokemon, so I'd love to know what that damage calculation is. But critically, Amoonguss does survive and it's able to eat its berry, so it's recovered a little bit of health, but it's looking very threatened right now, and rightly so. It's keeping itself protected this turn.
Yeah, no more damage coming into the Amoonguss whatsoever. Another Thunderbolt coming in from that Choice Specs Fluttermane. Ben really trying to just get some damage on the field, and indeed, as the paralysis comes around from that Thunderbolt, Heavy Slam going into Amoonguss's Protect, very right to not be taking any more damage this turn, and Jamie's still in a pretty decent position.
Yeah, absolutely. He can't withdraw his Dondozo because Tatsugiri's in its mouth. That's a drawback of that Commander ability. But, you know, when you have your Dondozo's defenses boosted up, you are, of course, increasing its longevity on the field, and then you're opening yourself up to potential bad luck, like getting paralyzed with that Thunderbolt from the Fluttermane. So I would argue it's bound to happen sooner or later. Arguably, you might want it to happen later, but at least Jamie no longer has to worry about what if I get paralyzed this turn, you know. It's there, and hopefully he'll be able to break through the paralysis. Dondozo still has its speed boosted, even though it's lessened somewhat by the paralysis, so it'll be interesting to see what the speed interactions are. Amoonguss fails a double protect.
It does indeed. Another Thunderbolt coming into that Dondozo from the Fluttermane, and the first turn of full paralysis there from that Dondozo, not being able to knock out the Amoonguss, and of course the Amoonguss did try to go for a double protect, and unfortunately for Ben, didn't succeed, but fortunately Thunderbolt coming through for Ben as well. I really like the way that both of these players are approaching this match, both knowing that the Amoonguss is the linchpin of being able to whether or not Jamie is able to get up Trick Room or not and execute a really quite dangerous strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Amoonguss is going to keep itself safe this turn, which makes sense on relatively low health. Fluttermane going for another Thunderbolt. Will Dondozo be able to hit through the paralysis this turn? No, it cannot. That's really terrible luck for Jamie there. I don't know if you saw Ben, but he locked in his move there on that previous turn with alarming speed. He knows what his plan is. He just has to hit through the paralysis. Amoonguss should be going down to a potential Earthquake, and then he's free to set up Trick Room, one would hope.
One benefit of using a Dondozo Tatsugiri combination is it does cut out the options that you have to think about every turn.
Yeah.
You look at the 4 moves that you pick and you think, that one. Yep, I'm gonna be doing that one this time. So yeah, not surprising that Jamie's playing a little bit quickly, but of course Ben is holding his ground, I think would be the best way that I could describe this, with that Fluttermane just carrying on, chipping away at this Dondozo.
Yeah, and Amoonguss is wisely switching out there, getting a regenerator boost to his health as Chi Yu comes in, which in this position will be super effective against Jamie's Dondozo with that Steel Terror. Dondozo does survive on 10 HP there. Earthquake is able to connect this time. It's going to be super effective onto Chi Yu, and it's not enough for the knockout because Chi Yu is holding that focus sash. So a good switch there from Ben, but one of his very heavy offensive threats is already very low on health.
What a great turn for Jamie to actually get off the Earthquake on the Chi Yu switch in there. Would have knocked out Amoonguss as well, so a good way to knock out Amoonguss, do a bit of damage to Fluttermane, and cover the switch in for the Chi Yu. A Thunderbolt coming out from this Fluttermane is, of course, enough to knock out this Dondozo. And the follow-up move from Chi Yu will be landing into this Tatsugiri.
Yeah, it will, and yes, it's a Dark Pulse. Wisely not a Fire-type move, because that would be doubly resisted by the Water Dragon-type Tatsugiri. But Tatsugiri is now down to about 1/3 to 1/4 of its health, as Screamtail does come back out. Will Jamie be angling to set up the Trick Room going into this next turn, even though Ben still has his Amoonguss available to him in the back, which we'll have to see.
We will indeed. Ben's in a great position, I think, here with lots of offensive pressure on the field. Likely that Fluttermane is going to be outspeeding that Life Orb Tatsugiri. So a great position for the Fluttermane to be in. It will have to go for a single target Thunderbolt if it wants to do damage, as it is locked in with those choice specs. But that does open up the door for Jamie to go for that Trick Room. And certainly if there's any knockouts happening this turn, then that Amoonguss will be ready in the back.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have the reveal of the 4th Pokemon yet for Jamie. I'm intrigued to see what that might be. It's Dark Pulse coming out into Screamtail. Is it going to get the flinch? No, it's not. So Screamtail is able to set up Trick Room. The speed order is reversed. He's gone for it, even though Ben has his Amoonguss in the back. And Iron Hands, a very worthy candidate to thrive in this Trick Room scenario.
And if Jamie hadn't committed the Terra Steel so early, one, the Dondozo probably would have been knocked out a little bit sooner, but also, there would have been the opportunity if Jamie managed to get to this position for that Iron Hands to go for a Terra Grass, boosted by the Howl, would make it both a really prominent threat on the field, as well as stopping Ben's Amoonguss really being a stopper in the works.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, a lot kind of had to go wrong for Jamie there to not make the Terra Steel worth it, but unfortunately, quite a lot did go wrong for him when his Dondozo was out with those paralyses. Screamtail is able to set up that Howl, really cool tech there on this Pokemon, and boosting, of course, Iron Hands' attack as well. Wild Charge comes out. This is going to be enough for the knockout onto Ben's Fluttermane. It goes down. Of course, there was the threat of the Fake Out that could have gone into the Chi Yu, but Jamie decided to opt for a different strategy. And so another Pokemon of Ben's will be joining the field, but not before Heat Wave comes out from Chi Yu onto Jamie's Pokemon. And it deals a little bit of good chip damage to both of the Pokemon as Amoonguss rejoins the field in Trick Room.
Absolutely, that's going to make this Amoonguss likely the fastest Pokemon on the field. There's an opportunity for Screamtail maybe to be going first with that Power Band that halves its speed. If Jamie's trained his Scream Tail to be as slow as it possibly can be. I don't actually personally know those speed interactions. I haven't seen a power band Scream Tail yet before in this format, so we'll have to see how this plays out and how Ben has also trained Amoongus on his side as well. If it is the Scream Tail that goes first, it does have access to Psychic Fang, which is going to be landing into the Amoongus. It's going to be picking up that KO. Amoongus goes down. The Iron Hands is free to knock out that Chi-Yu in one hit with a wild charge, and Jamie takes a commanding position in game one.
Yeah, it really does. Knowing that your Scream Tail does outspeed the Amoongus in Trick Room is massive to know, because really Jamie can go with either mode, whether it's Trick Room or not. He knows that he will be able to deal with the Amoongus before it can move, and that is, you know, Spore is such a pesky move to come out, so that is fantastic news for Jamie as Iron Bundle joins the field, but it hates being in Trick Room.
It certainly does. It hates being in Trick Room against a couple of Pokemon that know some fighting moves.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not the most ideal of positions to be in, but of course Ben has an answer for fighting moves on his Iron Bundle, committing the Terror very late in the game and going into that Ghost typing. I don't think Jamie is likely to fall foul of this. There's definitely options that he has that don't involve using fighting moves, as the Howl comes out from the Scream Tail, boosting that Iron Hands power, and it is the Wild Charge knocking out the Iron Bundle.
Yeah, there we go. Ben's Iron Bundle is down immediately as soon as it comes in. So even though Jamie got off to a bit of a rough start in that game, it didn't matter in the end. He was able to clinch out the victory with such a cool technique, that power band on the Scream Tail.
And it's so nice to see the way that the Scream Tail was implemented in that team. You know, coming out in the leads, hang on a second, there's an Amoongus there, right, back to the back. Let's you know, see what we can do with this Dondozo with its safety goggles. You saw in the early game, I think was really crucial, was that Jamie went for that heavy slam into the Amoongus to do as much damage as possible. If it had gotten a knockout, then Jamie's Dondozo would have done its job. If it didn't get a knockout as it did, it would have put the Amoongus in range for that Scream Tail to go for a Psychic Fangs in the late game and set it up so that that Psychic Fangs could go off, and then whatever was next to Scream Tail could have a little bit of fun in Trick Room. Yeah,
exactly, and it's important to call out as well that Jamie, still, even though he has Pokemon that can both outspeed and underspeed Ben's Amoongus, while it's on the field, he still has to play around it, because Trick Room has very late priority in any given turn. So Amoongus' Spore would be able to go off into the Scream Tail before it's able to set up Trick Room. So he was able to get the Scream Tail out in the perfect position when Amoongus was not on the field for Ben to set that up, so that when it came back in, any Spores were not an issue. So just has to make sure, for example, that might be why he has Fake Out on his Iron Hands, so that Trick Room can go out without any Spores coming out from Amoongus.
Definitely, and you know, looking at game two, it's really hard to see how Ben is able to circumnavigate this kind of strategy with the Dondozo and Scream Tail as the lead for Jamie. It seems like it offers so much flexibility. If Ben leads the Amoongus, well, we could see a little bit of a repeat of game one, where the Tatsugiri comes in. Maybe there's a little bit more damage. Maybe Ben locks into Shadow Ball instead of Thunderbolt as an adaptation. But really, it comes down to, you know, doing a lot of damage to that Amoongus. If the Amoongus isn't in the lead, then the Scream Tail can opt to go straight for that Trick Room.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something that Ben is absolutely going to have to bear in mind. Even though he wasn't able to get a huge amount out of his Amoongus in that game, it could still put in a lot of work for him as we get into game two. And it's Fluttermane and Chi-Yu being led for Ben and for Jamie. It is that Scream Tail and Iron Hand. So no Amoongus on the field, Ben.
No Amoongus on the field, and a Fake Out in play as well. But that Chi-Yu is definitely going for a little bit more of a shock and awe tactic alongside the Fluttermane, able to drop the special defense of that Scream Tail. And again, I don't know the calculations behind this particular scenario, whether or not the Fluttermane's Choice Specs Shadow Ball would be enough to pick up the knockout onto this Scream Tail, assisted by Chi-Yu's Beads of Ruin ability.
Yeah, exactly. Chi-Yu is reducing the special defense of all the Pokemon on the field apart from itself at this point. So Fluttermane could go for a big old attack into Iron Hands, and of course Fluttermane is also immune to Fake Out from Iron Hands, so potentially it could get rid of the Iron Hands on this very turn 1, but there could be a Fake Out coming out into the Chi-Yu, which is the Grass Terror type, not Ghost. But it's a Terror coming out onto Jamie's Screamtail. It has become the Water type, a nice defensive one there.
And this is a real choice for Ben. We'll see if he's locked into Thunderbolt, Shadow Ball, or Moonblast, as we see here, coming in to deal with that Iron Hands, and it's a knockout in 1. That Iron Hands is going back to Jamie. No Fake Out coming out from Jamie either, so a follow-up Heat Wave from this Chi-Yu is going to do a little bit of chip damage onto the Screamtail as the Trick Room gets set up, but that's one of Jamie's big attackers that's no longer able to be putting a lot of threats onto Ben's team.
Yeah, absolutely, and Trick Room is up. Dondozo comes in. If there's a Tatsugiri in the back, then you don't really want your Dondozo to get a speed boost by switching in that Tatsugiri, so it might not be, or maybe Jamie's waiting for Trick Room to be over before he switches in that Tatsugiri. But it's double water types on the field for Jamie at the moment, but the Screamtail at least is in the position that it likes to be in Trick Room. It could also go for a Howl to boost up the attack stat of the Dondozo without needing to boost the speed, which switching in Tatsugiri would do. So yeah, lots of options available for Jamie at this point, and one can only hope that Ben had budgeted, had planned for Trick Room going up going into this game too.
I'm sure he has, and certainly in a position where Ben has all of his HP left remaining on all 4 Pokemon. So if there was any leeway to have, Ben has as much of it as he's capable of having. Fluttermane is withdrawing, fearing another attack coming in from the Dondozo, most likely on Jamie's side of the field, and it is in favour of that Ting Lu. So blocking, especially lowering the special attack of the Pokemon on Jamie's side of the field, as well as his own Chi-Yu, kind of neutralising the field between the two of them. Terra Grass coming out from this Chi-Yu is going to be a defensive Terra option against this Dondozo, which is boosted further by the Howl rather than that Tatsugiri.
Yeah, exactly. Dondozo is looking very threatening indeed right now. It is going for that heavy slam on Stinglu. Not a huge amount of damage. Stinglu is a very bulky Pokemon, but Dark Pulse coming out in Screamtail, which it takes very well. It could take another few of those at least from the Chi-Yu. So just chipping damage away on both sides of the field here, but Ben will be well aware that the more howls that Screamtail gets off, the more damage Jamie will be able to dish out.
But it's nice getting this Ting Lu in this position. You know that the Ruination is there, and Jamie has no recovery options on the Dondozo. So I really like how Ben has changed up modes and is using that Ting Lu in this particular matchup. Chi-Yu just giving itself a little bit more room to breathe and going for a Protect, not taking any damage from that Psychic Fangs from that Screamtail.
Yeah, maybe Jamie going for just some style points there, because you can't normally hit Psychic Fangs into the Dark type of Chi-Yu, but of course it is now the Grass type. Ting Lu responds with a heavy slam in Screamtail. Not very effective, of course. Now it is a Water type. Would have been a super effective hit otherwise. So yes, just chipping away, continuing into this turn.
And this Ting Lu, I would have liked to see a little bit more of a focus into that Dondozo. I mean, we know that Tatsugiri's in the back. Maybe Ben thinks that there is another option there to go. A Psychic Fangs coming out from the Screamtail, and a knockout with a heavy slam coming from that Dondozo. The Chi-Yu is going to be returning back to Ben, and it's 3 Pokemon apiece.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to see the Chi-Yu and the Ting Lu out together, because of course they have contradictory abilities. But now the Chi-Yu is down, it's just the special attack that will be lowered on the field, as Ruination was able to connect down into Jamie's Dondozo. So even though it's bulky, if you keep halving the HP, then the bulk doesn't really matter too much there.
Not at all. And, you know, with that safety goggles on the Dondozo, there is a real question about whether or not this Tatsugiri comes in this turn to block the Amoonguss that has just joined the field, being as effective as Ben is hoping it to be. But of course, there's always a little tidbit of a side pollen puff that could be really helpful to keep that Ting Lu nice and healthy. We saw that the Dondozo didn't do too much damage with the heavy slam, so maybe a little bit of a tactic that Ben is going for.
Yeah, and Jamie is deciding to switch in the Tatsugiri here, so now Dondozo will get a speed boost on top of the Howl boost it already received, so it should be at +3 of its physical attack here. So that is a really massive threat on the field now, just as Trick Room should be expiring very shortly. So really well-timed switch in for Jamie there. Amoonguss is going to keep himself safe, which is wise here, as the next Pokemon to move will, of course, be that Ting Lu going for a Stomping Tantrum, which Tatsugiri will dodge. It was going into that slot that was formerly, oh my goodness, formerly the Scream Tail, but that Wave Crash is enough for the knockout onto Ting Lu. Very bulky Pokemon, but of course a super effective hit with water against ground there, as Trick Room, just in time, expires for Jamie.
What great timing. Really, really great timing there. Jamie must be wearing his watch today. Yeah, definitely. The Tatsugiri coming in does block from the Amoonguss's Spore. It didn't go for any damaging moves, just trying to protect itself like it needed to in Game 1, but Jamie has a little bit of a different strategy going into Game 2. Now this Fluttermane comes in for Ben, and it's looking like the Amoonguss being on the field and next to the Fluttermane is going to be fantastic with the amount of health that Dondozo has left, because I wouldn't be surprised if Dondozo's going down in 1 this turn to a Fluttermane.
Well, maybe, man. Its defenses are boosted, but after that Ruination, all that damage does add up. And let's see, it's Moonblast. Yes, of course it is. That Dondozo was on significantly low health. And Tatsugiri will hop back out of the mouth, as Screamtail will have to rejoin the field. Tatsugiri will take a nap now, thanks to Amoonguss going for that Spore. And the Fluttermane Amoonguss is a lead that we saw quite a lot so far today. And now it's working the end game here for Ben. Screamtail rejoins the field with relatively little health remaining.
And no protects to speak of either. Jamie is a very much a player that is known for not carrying too many protective options on his team, and that's working, unfortunately, against him in this endgame scenario with Tatsugiri asleep, Screamtail on such low health, and Jamie knows that, forfeits the game, and Ben takes Game 2 of this round. Most notably here as well, just to make another note, if you've only just joined the stream, this is a pair down match. Jamie is 6-0 and Ben is currently 5-1 in the Malmö Regional Championships.
Yeah, that's right. We're in round 7. It's a rerun of the Malmö Regional Final from 2018 between Jamie Boyt and Ben Markham. It's 1 game apiece between these two players, and we'll very shortly be getting into Game 3. Jamie was able to clinch out the first game. Ben has just taken the second, despite some very well-timed positioning from Jamie there, making sure that Trick Room was expiring just as his faster Pokemon were coming in.
Exactly that, and I think the change in leads was probably what hurt Jamie in this matchup. If it was the Chi-Yu and Dondozo coming out against Dondozo, Chi-Yu and Fluttermane coming out against the Dondozo and the Screamtail, there could have been a few more options, I think, for Jamie to go for with getting the Trick Room up and getting those howls off, and most notably having the Iron Hands in the end game. Ben excellently predicting what was going to be happening, planning out the later stages of the game in his own mind, and knowing that the Iron Hands needed to go down turn 1 if Ben was to have a lot of chance to be able to get through Trick Room effectively.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. It was a big Moonblast into the Iron Hands. Jamie did lose that resource relatively early on. We'll have to see if it's a repeat, and Ben is going with the lead that worked for him in that game with the Chi-Yu and the Fluttermane. Jamie is going for the Iron Hands and the Screamtail, which was the lead he had in the previous game. So will he be keeping that Iron Hands safer in this game? I would hope so.
This is really too tough to call. I mean, there's always that question when this sort of thing happens, game after game. What are the changes that make such a difference to the outcome of the end game? Well, definitely what's going to be happening here in turn 1. Does the Iron Hands go down yet again to a Moonblast? Does Ben go for a Thunderbolt into the Screamtail, knowing that Jamie terrored in the last game? Does he go for a Shadow Ball into the Screamtail, with Jamie thinking that the targeting wouldn't be going into the Screamtail and therefore not committing his terror on turn 1?
Yeah, mind games are plenty going into this turn 1, and we'll have to see how it plays out right here, right now, as it's a Terror coming out going into Ben's Flutter main. It is maximizing its damage output with that fairy type. It will be dealing massive damage this turn. That Iron Hands will certainly not be appreciating that if it is staying in, which it seems to be. And it's a Terror coming out from Jamie as well. Both players going on the offensive in this game 3 onto his Screamtail. So Screamtail becoming the water type here. And how is this turn going to play out? Here we go.
Well, yeah, indeed. Both of these Terror types are going to be very consequential, I'm sure, coming into the endgame. Moonblast is going into the Screamtail, not enough to pick up the KO, and a Dark Pulse follow-up from Ben. Neutral, whether it terrors or not, and it is going to be enough to pick up that Screamtail. No Trick Room for Jamie in game 3.
Is that going to be crucial? Only time will tell. Wild Charge is able to pick up the knockout onto Fluttermane. Of course, it's not a Pokemon known for its physical defense, so even though Jamie has not been able to set up Trick Room, it's one Pokemon lost apiece for both of these trainers.
And Dondozo, Tatsugiri likely in the back for Jamie. We got a sneak peek of it. Ben's probably thinking that it came to both games 1 and games 2. The likelihood is it's coming to game 3, and that's going to benefit Dondozo somewhat there. Amoonguss coming back into the fray, and certainly with that Dondozo not being able to Terra into the Steel type, this Chi-Yu is certainly not going to appreciate as much being in front of that Dondozo and the Iron Hands.
Yeah, absolutely. Amoonguss is still there. Of course, the mind games with Amoonguss determine sort of if you're going to protect, then I don't want to double up into you because that's a wasted turn. But of course, if you're going for a Spore, then I want to remove you as quickly as possible. So it's really, really difficult for Jamie in this position with that Amoonguss on the field, and he's deciding how best to play around this as he's locking in his moves. If that Tatsugiri joins the field, then Dondozo will not be able to leave the field.
No, certainly not, and that is exactly what's going to be happening right now. You called it perfectly as the Tatsugiri joins the field and nestles up with Dondozo this turn, and going to be raising, of course, all of its stats as you've seen before. It's going to be the Earthquake coming out that we got a sneak preview of in the turn order coming out here for Jamie. Going to be doing consistent damage to both Pokemon on Ben's side of the field. Ben going on the offensive with a nasty plot, trying to boost above the Dondozo, but the Dondozo is in fact oblivious, so those boosts will in fact make a big impact in how the rest of the turn unfolds.
Yeah, absolutely. Chi-Yu is able to hang on with the Focus Sash there, and Amoonguss doing an expertly timed Pollen Puff to heal up that Chi-Yu just a little bit. Of course, it still doesn't like facing down that Dondozo with its water type and its ground type moves. But yes, the Oblivious on the Dondozo may well come into play in this next turn.
It certainly could. It'll be depending on how this Chi-Yu is trained and of course how this Dondozo is trained, of that choice that Jamie's had to make between wanting it to be effective in Trick Room and with its boost up. It will be the Chi-Yu that is striking first, but Dark Pulse does not get the flinch, and Earthquake is enough to pick up the KO onto that Chi-Yu, but not quite onto that Amoonguss.
But will Amoonguss be going for a Spore into the Dondozo to put it to sleep? We'll have to see after it eats its berries. But of course, the Dondozo is wearing the safety goggles anyway, so it does not matter. Amoonguss loves to face down a Amoonguss hates to face down a Dondozo that's wearing those safety goggles, and we can see that little chip damage coming out from the Pollen Puff as Tinglu joins the field for Ben. So really, really good turn there for Jamie.
A real use of safety goggles here, both for the Amoonguss and protecting it from the Spore on this Dondozo. But the other benefit of safety goggles is that it's immune to all powder moves, which includes Rage Powder. So this Wave Crash is going to be able to land its mark into Tinglu. With those boosts that Tatsugiri affords it, is easily going to be enough to pick up the knockout. Takes a lot of recoil for its troubles, and this Pollen Puff looks like it's going to be enough. Oh! No. It survives on 5 hit points.
Dondozo does survive there. It's Amoonguss against the world here. There's not much Ben can do, and it goes down. So Jamie Boyt, and he's looking very happy there, is your winner of Swiss Round 7. 7-0 at this point in the tournament. He's guaranteed a place in Day 2 tomorrow. Congratulations to Jamie.
One of the first players that will have made it to the second stage of this tournament. We have 5 Swiss rounds tomorrow, of which Jamie Boyt will be a part of. Ben, of course, not out of the running just yet. 2 losses now, 5-2 record. 2 more wins will place Ben into the next stage of the tournament tomorrow in day 2 of Swiss.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ben, you know, not all is lost here. He will have to win his next 2 games. And, you know, he played masterfully around Jamie. And, of course, he was able to clinch out that game too. So, really exciting to see if he'll be able to win those final 2 games. But it's worth calling out as well what we were saying with the Oblivious versus Unaware on the Dondozo, that with Chiyu going for that nasty plot, boosting up its special attack, a Pokemon with Unaware ignores those boosts. But because Jamie's Dondozo has the Oblivious ability instead, the Chiyu still would have been able to deal heightened damage into that slot.
And that's really effective for when you're trying to knock out a Dondozo, because usually boosting in front of it, as you say, doesn't make any difference whatsoever. And it's so difficult to get through all of those boosts. That's why Unaware is the most common option. But of course, Jamie looking for other options, especially when you have that Howl on your team with the Screen Tail, using it in Trick Room. We saw that in game 2, I believe, where Dondozo was able to get a couple of boosts just because it was next to that Screen Tail. So you just kind of don't need the Unaware quite as much to stop things like Intimidate or other things from playing as much of a factor.
Yeah, especially when you can just switch in Tatsugiri at any point and give yourself a sharp boost to your attack stat anyway. But so cool, Ben, so cool. A Scream Tail with a power band banded in a different way, being able to go 7-0 for Jamie today.
And we'll see if Jamie manages to get the clean streak. That'd be something I'd really be looking forward to seeing, because you know, we've had a lot of different teams come about and a quite stable Regulation C format so far. Jamie is one of the players that thrives in those sort of environments, really finding the ways to chip away at those established teams effectively. And you know, coming up against a player like Ben that likes to use those established teams, it's you kind of feel like it's in Jamie's favor, knowing how to unpick those teams and find all of the weaknesses and then execute a strategy completely well.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got to call out as well that in that game 1, he did not have, that Dondozo did not have the time of his life. It was paralyzed and it kept being unable to move at the end of each turn. But Jamie was still able to win, and it just goes to show that even in this game of Pokemon where luck is a factor, if you play well, then hopefully, it's not going to be the be-all and end-all.
You've got to be building your teams definitely to be able to take the odd little bit of misfortune, especially when you're you know, a lot of team compositions, they've got things like Chi-Yu with Heat Wave and Iron Bundle with Icy Wind and Hydro Pump, and trying to rely on those powerful moves that, you know, do a lot of damage when they hit, but 80% of the time, certainly for Iron Bundle, Hydro Pump is not as accurate as I think most players would like to see.
Yeah, the number of players who have doubted whether Hydro Pump is in fact 80% accurate, more like 50-50 perhaps. That's absolutely something that's been coming out time and time again. And we've been seeing, it feels like as a result, Hydro Pump run perhaps less frequently on Iron Bundle, or at least clicked less frequently as a result of that. But I mean, we've got to give congratulations to Ben as well. He played really well pivoting around. And you know, Jamie could have swept even faster and even more cleanly, but Ben was really a thorn in his side, making sure he wasn't going to be able to take those knockouts. But it's really great to know for Jamie that his Scream Tail with that power band does underspeed Amoonguss, so that in Trick Room it can go first. It
certainly can, and you know, that's definitely a call out I'd like to make for Ben, really, in the way that he played certainly game 1 and game 3, I believe, with it, you know, making sure to protect that Amoonguss. It needs to come, right, because there's so much on Jamie's side of the field that really benefits Amoonguss. Dondozo is really the thorn in Amoonguss's side, and being able to, you know, put that Scream Tail to sleep, or at least attempt to put pressure on the Trick Room, redirect attacks from something like that Iron Hands, are invaluable tools, and definitely a very good reason for Ben to keep bringing that Amoonguss, even though it kind of ended up in situations where it was in front of a Dondozo and just really kind of struggling. Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing, a team like Jamie's forces the opponent to do that. You have to bring a Pokemon, even though you know that into the rest of the team, it doesn't do great, it doesn't achieve a huge amount, but you know, as long as there's that threat there, then you have to bring it. And for Jamie, that means he knows that there is one essentially guaranteed Pokemon choice onto Ben's team in
in that Amoonguss, and he can pivot around the other 3. So, yeah, the mind games that go on when you're running a team that's perhaps less expected.
Yeah, certainly. And, I think, Jamie has been doing this sort of thing for years. I remember in the 2017, it was either 2017 or 2018, and my memory is failing me slightly here, where Jamie went 7-0 in the Swiss of the World Championships that year with Breloom and Salazzle, 2 Pokemon that certainly weren't at the top of the metagame in it's 2019 that it happened, actually, thinking back now. And managing to get top 16 at the World Championships with that team. And this is the sort of thing that Jamie does so well, and what I'm really looking forward to seeing him do both in later stages of the events that we still have in Europe, in Turin, if he's able to attend, but also in the World Championships as well, as I know Jamie is planning to potentially attend as well.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed for him. Grandpa Ben there having a little bit of memory fading with, whether was it 2017, 18, 19? He's Ben, a veteran of the game, next to me on the desk here, knowing all of these previous results.
Thank you for calling that out, Zoe, David, Charlie, that's
yeah, got there in the end.
Got there in the end, yes. Unfortunately, have been playing this game, or fortunately, in fact, have been playing this game, I correct myself, for a very long time now. And, enough time to see these players rise up. I remember when Jamie started playing the game way back in 2015, was the first time he attended an event, and has always had that charm and drive to use what he thinks is best rather than what everybody else is using in the format. So, and Jamie's continued to do that over the years, got better and better and better, and seeing him having this success is really heartwarming, seeing him go from right from the start to where he is right now.
Yeah, he's a player who exudes confidence as well, and I think that's something to call out. You want to be in the right mental state, I think, going into a tournament like this, and confidence may well be key. If you have that little bit more belief in your team over your opponent, then you may well win. I remember Jamie, for example, going into EUIC saying, I'm going to win. I'm the champion of EUIC. You're looking at him. It obviously didn't work out that way, but it gives you that mental resilience. That's not to say to be too braggadocious and boastful going into these events and amongst your friends, but, it's also playing with a sort of sense of what really is there to lose, and I think the players who take the pressure off themselves tend to see better results.
They certainly do. I mean, it's definitely a mental game. We talk about this all the time behind the desk of, the mental resilience that you have playing long games of Pokemon, short games of Pokemon as well, but lots of them every time you come to these sort of regional championships. But there's also the preparation coming into it, where you're, preparing for the event, you're building your teams, you're, running calculations on, hey, does this Screamtail actually underspeed most Amoongusses in the format? Let's have a look at the numbers, see if it works, and also test out how players are going to be, training their Amoongusses, whether I'm likely to outspeed or not likely to outspeed. And, Jamie is one of those players that is always innovating and finding those ways to improve himself, and really just enjoys it along the way.
Yeah, exactly, and that's one of the things that's so beautiful about this game. There is so much room for experimentation, and Jamie is such an apt showcase of exactly that, looking into the Pokemon that might not be used as often, the ones, the move choices that might not be used as often, like the Howl, like the Power Band onto that Screamtail, Broop on it over the Amoonguss. There's so much room for experimentation, and having the surprise factor over your opponent may well pay dividends as well. It's got to be a well-built team at the end of the day.
Of course.
But yes, playing around is just fun in itself, and who knows, maybe it will land you some really good results as well.
Certainly, and Ben's had a really good result here already. 5-2 is a very respectable record to be at the going into the last couple of rounds of a regional tournament, of course. I remember actually Ben starting in a little bit later than Jamie, actually, but we have a little bit of a story between Ben and myself. We both studied at the University of York in the UK, and I actually graduated and left the year that Ben joined. And Ben was part of the Pokemon Society at that particular university. That's where he got interested in VG VGC, and I just go back and look and think, if I was just a year younger, then we would have crossed paths a little bit earlier rather than a little bit later, and that would have been great to see.
Well, if you hadn't made yourself sound old already, you certainly did with that story there, Ben. But that's so interesting to hear, so interesting to get that insight. And it's always so touching, I imagine, to see such an old friend and close friend on stream doing so well. And I guess you must see him as kind of like a protege, someone you looked after.
Certainly Team Ben.
Yes.
Ben, we've worked together quite a bit over the years, and Ben, again, has developed from a player. I think I first played him in 2015, similar to Jamie in one of his first events in London, one of the regionals that got played there. And I remember thinking, like, Ben's got a lot of potential. You know, he's a player that I can see making consistent moves, using those consistent teams, which is exactly what he's using so well here. And certainly with the way that he played that match, of course, you know, trying to make those sort of safe reads, adjustments into Jamie's a little bit more off-the-wall strategy, so to speak. And Ben has developed so much over the years and been such a great part of the UK community as well. So again, yeah. What a way to feature both the UK community as well as these two great players. But without further ado, we have these two players, or one player, in fact, ready for an interview now. It's Jamie Boyt that is going to be your winner from this round of the Malmö Regional Championships. Let's hear more about his team and experience in this event.
After that fantastic round 7.
Excuse me.
Yes, sorry.
You are sitting on the wrong side of the couch for that.
My apologies.
Yes, we are here with Jamie Boyt, the winner of our last round. What an exciting round and what a cool team. Tell us about your thoughts on that game 3.
Oh, that I think I got him in a reasonable pin in that. Like, either I get the wild charge KO into the bottoming, hence what happens, or I get my trick room, and then I'm sorted. And apparently, we saw that my Screamtail underspeeds his Among Us, because Banded Screamtail is the best Screamtail.
I'm sure everyone is just dying to know about your banded Screamtail. So tell us, how did you come up with this idea? This is a wild and crazy idea.
Yeah, so I've been coaching a junior who's from the UK as well, and he's been using a hard trick room team, and I've been kind of washed up at this point. Up until now, it seems like I'm doing right. But I haven't been doing so well in previous tournaments. So I was like, all right, fine, I'll try hard trick room. And then it was actually, okay, this is actually gelling with me somewhat. And then I had a couple of ideas, and the main one was, can I get away with attacking and setting up trick room in the same turn? Well, if I've got like Hatterene, it's not the bulkiest Pokemon. It's probably going to get KO'd if you don't fake out a Rage Powder. Is okay, what are the bulky trick room setters? Screamtail is the bulkiest. So then it's like, okay, I need to make it work. It's too fast. It's way too fast. No, it's not anymore. So I'm going to halve my speed, and then I'll underspeed everything I need to. So that's how the thought process came together. That's why the Screamtail came onto the team.
And seeing it underspeed that Among Us in trick room, that was incredible. And then it knocked out the Among Us straight away with a +1 health. So you've also running safety goggles Terra Steel Dondozo, which is not a very conventional moveset. Can you tell us a bit more about that Dondozo?
Yes, thank you very much, Gabriella Gatti, for trending all the Among Us to clear Smog and all the Palafins away from Haze. Because then, safety goggles, Terra Steel, Among Us can't do anything, Palafin can't do anything as well. So basically, if they have the now meta trends of Dondozo answers, they can't beat my Dondozo.
Yeah, and now at this point, you are guaranteed day 2. So how are you feeling?
Brilliant. I thought I wasn't so good in this format, and apparently I can still play the game somewhat. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, we love your team. So tell us a little bit about your plan going into Worlds.
Worlds, I need to get to the final. I've done it before. I've won this before. I'll just do it again. But yeah, I'm 158 points away at the moment, and I am competing in Turin, so that is still a little bit of a buffer. But it would be nice to actually get a reasonable chunk of points, because I whiffed it in EUIC. I would have had my invite at this point if I won my last round in the EUIC. Not quite. Now I need to go the hard way.
Yes, well, best of luck going into the tournament, and we're sure with such a cool and fun creative team such as yours, it'll be going a long way. So that's all the time that we have for now. We are going to cut to a very short break, so don't go anywhere, and we'll be back very shortly.